Dog barks desperately at soldier during ceremony. Police step in and what happens next shocks all. The late autumn sun cast long shadows across Atlanta's Memorial Park as Officer Sarah Collins adjusted her police uniform's collar, watching Max, her Belgian Malinois partner, scan the growing crowd with practiced efficiency. The morning air carried a mix of crisp fall leaves and the solemn atmosphere of the upcoming military honors ceremony. For 6 years, they had worked countless security details together, but something felt different about today. "All clear on the west entrance," Sarah spoke into her radio, her trained eyes surveying the gathering of decorated veterans, proud families, and distinguished officials. Max stayed close to her side, his muscular frame alert but relaxed, until it wasn't. The first signs were subtle. Max's ears perked forward, his body tensing slightly as the line of soldiers to be honored began filing onto the stage. Sarah noticed the change immediately. After thousands of hours together, she could read his body language like a book. But this was a military ceremony, and these were decorated soldiers. She gave Max a gentle pat, silently commanding him to stay calm. The Secretary of Defense had just taken the podium when it happened. Max's powerful bark shattered the ceremonial silence, echoing across the memorial grounds. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she quickly tried to quiet him, but Max wouldn't stop. His attention was laser-focused on one of the soldiers in dress blues standing at attention on stage. "Max, quiet!" Sarah commanded in a harsh whisper, feeling the weight of hundreds of startled eyes turning toward them. But for the first time in their partnership, Max completely ignored her. The soldier Max was fixated on shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the exit. Captain Harrison, the ceremony coordinator, shot Sarah a sharp look. "Officer Collins, control your dog or remove him from the premises." His words carried the full weight of military authority, but Max's barking only grew more insistent. Sarah felt her face flush with embarrassment. This wasn't some rookie K-9 unit. This was Max, the dog who had helped take down Atlanta's most notorious drug ring, who had found missing children in impossible conditions. He had never acted like this before, not once in 6 years. The soldier on stage was sweating now, despite the cool morning air. Sarah caught it, that slight tremor in his hands, the way his eyes wouldn't quite meet anyone's gaze. After 15 years in law enforcement, she knew guilty behavior when she saw it. "Sir," she said into her radio, keeping her voice low and professional, "I need a discreet background check on the third soldier from the left, present stage." She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the same instinct that had kept her alive through countless operations, telling her something was very wrong. Max's barking had taken on a different tone now, the same one he used when he found something dangerous during their narcotics sweeps. Sarah watched as the soldier's hand drifted toward his jacket pocket, a movement so slight most would miss it, but she didn't miss the flash of metal beneath his cuff. The next few seconds seemed to move in slow motion. Sarah's hand moved to her weapon as she scanned the crowd, noting the children in the front rows, the elderly veterans with their medals catching the morning light. One wrong move could turn this solemn ceremony into chaos. Her radio crackled to life. "Officer Collins, be advised, no match found for the credentials provided by Staff Sergeant James Wilson. I repeat, no match found." The soldier, or whoever he was, must have heard the radio call. His eyes met Sarah's across the ceremony ground, and in that moment she saw something that chilled her blood. Recognition, not of her, but of Max. "Captain Harrison," Sarah called out, her voice carrying the authority of 15 years on the force. "I need you to calmly begin evacuating the—" She never finished the sentence. The man in uniform suddenly bolted from the stage, shoving past the genuine soldiers beside him. The crowd gasped, and for a split second, Sarah faced the choice that had haunted her nightmares since the academy. Pursue the suspect or protect the civilians. Max's muscles bunched under her hand, ready to spring into action. But there was something else in his behavior, the way he kept looking back at the crowd, particularly at a group of children near the stage. In 6 years, Sarah had learned to trust these subtle signals more than any human insight. "All units, suspicious subject fleeing west on foot," she radioed, her voice steady despite the chaos. "But hold your positions. I repeat, hold your positions. Something's wrong." The suspect disappeared behind the memorial building, but Max wasn't pulling to chase him. Instead, he turned his attention to the abandoned podium, his bark changing to the sharp, insistent sound Sarah knew too well from their bomb detection training. And suddenly, with horrifying clarity, she understood. This wasn't just about one impostor trying to infiltrate a military ceremony. This was something much bigger, much more dangerous. And Max had known it all along. Sarah reached for her radio again, her throat tight, as she called in the code that would bring the bomb squad rushing to Memorial Park. In the distance, sirens began to wail, and she watched the false soldier's discarded uniform cap tumble across the stage in the autumn wind, carrying with it the first hints of a conspiracy that would shake the Atlanta Police Department to its core. Max pressed against her leg, his earlier frenzy replaced by the focused intensity of a K-9 officer on high alert. Sarah laid her hand on his head, a gesture of trust and partnership that went beyond words. Whatever they were about to uncover, they would face it together. "Good boy, Max," she whispered, as the first evacuation orders began to echo across the park. "You were right all along." The evacuation was proceeding with military precision, but Sarah's mind raced through the implications of what they'd discovered. Max worked methodically around the podium, his trained nose tracking an invisible trail that only he could detect. The bomb squad was still 4 minutes out, and every second felt like an eternity. Agent Cooper from Homeland Security, a tall man in a dark suit, flashed his badge, approaching Sarah with purposeful strides. "We've been tracking a series of security breaches at military installations across the southeast. Your K-9's response may have just uncovered a significant piece of the puzzle." Sarah nodded, but her attention was split between the agent and Max's increasingly agitated behavior around the stage. She'd seen that particular body language before, 6 years ago, during their first week of training together. The memory hit her with startling clarity. A rain-soaked morning at the Atlanta Police K-9 Training Center, where she'd first met the Belgian Malinois, who would become her partner. "He's been through 3 handlers already," Sergeant Martinez had warned her, leading Sarah to a kennel where a lean, muscular dog watched them with intelligent eyes. "Great instincts, but too intense, too focused. Nobody can control him." Icky. But Sarah had seen something else in those amber eyes, not defiance, but determination. When she approached the kennel, Max hadn't barked or lunged. He'd simply tilted his head, studying her with the same intensity she used when evaluating a crime scene. "He's not uncontrollable," she'd replied, watching Max's ears twitch at the sound of her voice. "He's waiting for someone who'll trust his instincts." A sharp bark from Max snapped Sarah back to the present. He'd moved away from the podium and was now intensely focused on a decorative planter near the stage steps. "Clear the perimeter!" Sarah shouted, trusting Max's signal without hesitation. "Agent Cooper, we need to extend the evacuation radius another 50 yards. The bomb squad arrived in a screech of tires, their heavy gear clanking as they approached. Sarah briefed them quickly, noting each location Max had flagged. As she spoke, her phone buzzed with an incoming text from the precinct's analyst. "Facial recognition got a hit on our runner," she reported to Cooper, scanning the message. "He's using the identity of Staff Sergeant James Wilson, who was killed in action 3 years ago, but his real name is David Martinez," Cooper finished, pulling up a file on his tablet. "Former Army specialist, dishonorably discharged in 2021. He's been on our radar for stealing military identities, but we could never catch him in the act. Until today." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "Martinez, any relation to Sergeant Ramon Martinez from the K-9 Training Center?" Cooper's expression darkened. "His brother, and that's not all. Ramon Martinez was found dead in his home this morning. Initial reports suggest it wasn't natural causes." The pieces started falling into place with horrifying clarity. Ramon Martinez had been Max's trainer before Sarah, the one who'd first spotted his extraordinary abilities. If David Martinez was involved, "This isn't just about infiltrating a ceremony," Sarah said, watching as the bomb squad carefully examined the planter Max had identified. "They're targeting K-9 units specifically. Max recognized his scent because David Martinez was around during his initial training." Cooper nodded. "Your dog didn't just spot an impostor. He recognized someone who shouldn't be alive, according to official records." A shout from the bomb squad confirmed their worst fears. Inside the planter, carefully concealed beneath fresh soil and flowers, they found a sophisticated explosive device, military-grade, with a remote detonator. "Officer Collins!" One of the bomb technicians waved her over. "You need to see this!" Sarah approached, Max at her heel, his body tense but controlled. The tech pointed to a small symbol etched into the device's casing, a wolf's head with a lightning bolt through it. Her blood ran cold. She'd seen that symbol before, in a case file that still gave her nightmares. 8 years ago, her father, a military police officer, had been killed investigating a series of thefts at army bases. The perpetrators had left the same calling card. "Max," she whispered, her hand finding his fur, "what exactly have we stumbled into?" Her radio crackled with urgent news. Local police had spotted Martinez heading toward the old industrial district, but even as the call came in, Max's attention was fixed on something else. The maintenance tunnel entrance, partially hidden behind the memorial's east wing. Sarah looked at her partner, reading the intensity in his posture. Martinez's escape route was a diversion. The real threat was still here, underground, and Max knew it. "Agent Cooper," she said, checking her weapon, "I'm going to need your team to handle the surface pursuit. Max and I have a different trail to follow." Cooper studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Whatever your dog found, it spooked Martinez enough to break years of careful cover. Be careful down there, Officer Collins. Men like that are most dangerous when they're cornered." Sarah unclipped Max's ceremonial collar, replacing it with his tactical harness. The maintenance tunnel gaped before them like a dark mouth, holding secrets that had waited 8 years to be revealed. "Ready, partner?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Max's muscles were coiled tight, his focus absolute. Whatever lay in the darkness ahead, they would face it together. As they descended into the tunnel, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a case. This was destiny, the moment every training session, every patrol, every late-night stakeout had prepared them for. The truth about her father's death was down here, somewhere in the shadows, and Max, as always, would lead her to it. The maintenance tunnel swallowed what little daylight remained at its entrance, leaving Sarah and Max in a world of shadows and echoes. Their footsteps, both human and canine, created a syncopated rhythm against the concrete floor. The beam of Sarah's tactical flashlight cut through the darkness, while Max moved with the confidence of a predator in his natural element. Atlanta PD reported movement in the industrial district. Agent Cooper's voice crackled through her radio. "But Max might be right about the tunnel system. These plans show it connects to several strategic points around the city." Sarah clicked her radio once in acknowledgement, not wanting her voice to echo through the confined space. Max led the way, his nose working constantly, reading a story and sense that only he could detect. The tunnel branched ahead, and without hesitation, Max took the left path. The memory hit her suddenly, sharp and clear as broken glass. 8 years ago, she'd stood in the precinct's briefing room, a rookie officer watching as her father's photo was added to the wall of fallen officers. Captain Richard Collins, military police, killed while investigating a series of weapons thefts from army bases. The official report cited a routine traffic stop gone wrong, but Sarah had never believed it. A soft growl from Max pulled her back to the present. Ahead, a door hung slightly ajar, its heavy metal frame showing signs of recent use. Sarah raised her flashlight, catching a glimpse of something on the wall beside it, the same wolf and lightning bolt symbol they'd found on the explosive device. "This is Officer Collins," she whispered into her radio. "We've found something in the tunnel system, requesting backup at my location and a full background check on Ramon Martinez's service record, particularly any connections to weapons storage facilities." The door opened into a larger chamber that might once have been a utility room. Now it was something else entirely. Maps covered one wall, showing military installations across the southeast. Red marks indicated points of successful infiltration, while blue circles highlighted future targets. On a table, dozens of military IDs were laid out in neat rows, each bearing the photo of David Martinez, but with different names and ranks. "My God," Sarah breathed, taking in the scope of the operation. This wasn't just about stealing identities or infiltrating ceremonies. This was a systematic attack on military security. Max's nose led him to a filing cabinet, where he pawed insistently at the bottom drawer. Sarah pulled it open, finding folders packed with documents. The first one made her heart stop. Operation Ghost Soldier, Phase 1 complete. The inside were surveillance photos of military ceremonies, including several featuring the real Staff Sergeant James Wilson before his death. But it was the second folder that changed everything. Labeled simply Collins Investigation, it contained photos of her father, surveillance shots taken in the weeks before his death. The final image showed him meeting with someone at a coffee shop. Sarah recognized the man immediately. Ramon Martinez. Her father hadn't died during a traffic stop. He'd been close to exposing this operation, and Ramon Martinez had been feeding him information. When David Martinez found out his brother was informing, a sound echoed from somewhere in the tunnel system. Footsteps, trying to move quietly, but betrayed by the acoustics of the underground space. Max's ears pricked forward, his body tensing in recognition of a familiar scent. Sarah quickly photographed the evidence with her phone, sending the images to Cooper even as she drew her weapon. The footsteps were getting closer, accompanied now by the soft, metallic click of what could only be a weapon being readied. "I wondered if the dog would recognize me." David Martinez's voice echoed through the chamber. "Ramon always said he was special. Could smell deception," he claimed. Guess he was right. Sarah positioned herself behind a concrete pillar, Max at her side, every muscle in his body ready for action. "It's over, Martinez. We have the evidence, and backup is on the way. Your whole operation is exposed." A harsh laugh bounced off the walls. "You think this is about stolen IDs and base infiltration? Wake up, Officer Collins. Your father started to figure it out 8 years ago, and look what happened to him. And now my own brother. Ramon was helping him," Sarah called out, trying to pinpoint Martinez's location from his voice. "He was trying to do the right thing." "The right thing?" Martinez's voice dripped with contempt. "The right thing is making them pay for what they did to us. Every hero they celebrate, every medal they pin on their chests, it's all built on the backs of soldiers they used and discarded. Your father didn't understand. Ramon didn't understand. But you grew up in this world. You must see how corrupt it is." Max's growl deepened, his head turning toward a specific point in the darkness. Sarah adjusted her position, knowing she could trust his senses more than her own in these conditions. "This isn't about justice," she replied, keeping him talking while she maneuvered. "This is about revenge, and it ends today." "No, Officer Collins." Martinez's voice came from much closer now. "Today is just the beginning. Did you really think I'd let you walk out of here with that evidence?" The lights suddenly blazed on, emergency fluorescence that filled the chamber with harsh white light. Sarah blinked against the sudden glare, but Max was already in motion, reacting to a threat she couldn't yet see. In that moment of chaos, as shadows transformed into deadly reality, Sarah finally understood what her father must have felt in his last moments. The weight of discovery, the price of truth, and the cold certainty that some fights are worth dying for. But she had something her father didn't, a partner who could see in the dark, who could smell betrayal, and who had never, in 6 years of service, made the wrong call. "Max," she whispered, "find him." The Belgian Malinois launched into action, and the real battle for justice. 8 years in the making, began. Max's powerful frame cut through the harsh fluorescent light like a shadow-given form, his training and instincts perfectly aligned in this moment of crisis. Martinez's first shot went wide, the sound deafening in the confined space, but Max was already moving to flank him, exactly as he'd been trained. "Call him off!" Martinez shouted, his composure cracking as he backed away from the advancing K-9. "You have no idea what you're interfering with." Sarah moved in tandem with her partner, using Max's aggressive advance as cover to circle around the other side of the chamber. "It's over, Martinez. Drop the weapon." But there was something in his stance, a confidence that didn't match his desperate situation. Max sensed it too, his attention suddenly divided between Martinez and the tunnel entrance behind them. The radio at Martinez's belt crackled to life. "Package is in position. Awaiting your signal." Sarah's blood ran cold as the pieces clicked into place. The explosive device they'd found at the ceremony wasn't the only one. This entire confrontation was a diversion. "You've got a choice to make, Officer Collins," Martinez said, his earlier panic replaced by a cold smile. "Right now, my team is positioned at 3 different military ceremonies across Atlanta. Apparently, there's a lot of medal-giving happening today. Each location has a device just like the one your dog found. You can try to stop me, or you can save them. But you can't do both." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. The ceremony at Memorial Park had been evacuated, but there were others? Her finger tightened on her trigger. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Martinez pulled out a phone, showing her a live feed of another ceremony, this one at Fort McPherson. "Your father made the same choice, you know. Justice or lives." "He chose justice. How did that work out?" Max's growl deepened, but his eyes were fixed on the tunnel entrance. Sarah had learned to trust those instincts. They were telling her that Martinez wasn't alone down here. "Even if I let you go," she said, playing for time as she counted footsteps in the darkness, "you'll never get away with this. Every law enforcement agency in Georgia will be looking for you." Martinez laughed. "You still don't get it. This was never about getting away. This is about sending a message. Every time they pin a medal on another hero, they'll remember this day. They'll remember that their ceremonies, their honors, their whole system of fake glory is built on lies. The only lie here is you," Sarah replied, thinking of the real Staff Sergeant Wilson, who had died serving his country only to have his identity stolen by this bitter, twisted man. "You're not doing this for justice. You're doing it because you couldn't measure up to the real heroes." The taunt hit home. Martinez's face contorted with rage, and in that moment of lost control, Max made his move. The Belgian Malinois launched forward, but not at Martinez. Instead, he crashed into Sarah, knocking her aside, just as gunfire erupted from the tunnel entrance. 2 more men in tactical gear emerged from the darkness, their weapons trained on where Sarah had been standing a split second ago. But Max's intervention had saved her life, and now training took over. She rolled behind a concrete pillar, returning fire as Max engaged the nearest attacker. The chamber erupted into chaos. Martinez was shouting orders, trying to coordinate his team while keeping his phone ready to trigger the explosives. Sarah could hear boots on metal above, more of Martinez's people using the maintenance tunnels to surround them. Her radio crackled. "Officer Collins, this is Agent Cooper. We've traced the bomb signals. Response teams are en route to all locations. Do you copy?" But before she could respond, Martinez's voice cut through the firefight. "Last chance, Collins. Drop your weapon, or I trigger all 3 devices right now." Sarah looked at her partner, still holding one of the attackers at bay, and in that moment of connection, she knew what they had to do. 8 years ago, her father had faced this choice alone, but she wasn't alone. "Max," she called out, her voice carrying the command they had practiced countless times. "Protocol Echo." It was their highest-risk maneuver, reserved for situations where traditional tactics wouldn't work. Max immediately released his hold on the attacker and charged straight at Martinez, not to attack, but to execute a precisely choreographed plan. Martinez raised his gun, but Max wasn't aiming for him. Instead, the dog's powerful leap carried him past Martinez, knocking the phone from his hand. The device clattered across the floor as Sarah burst from cover, her weapon trained on Martinez's chest. "Down! Everyone down now!" she shouted, her voice carrying the full authority of her badge. "The next person who moves gets to experience why Max has the highest takedown rate in the Southeast." For a moment, the only sound was the heavy breathing of combat and the low, threatening growl of a K-9 officer ready to execute his duty. Then, from the tunnel entrance, came the welcome sound of multiple boots and the unmistakable announcement, "FBI, nobody move." As Agent Cooper's team flooded the chamber, Sarah kept her weapon trained on Martinez. His face showed not defeat, but a kind of twisted satisfaction. "You know this isn't the end," he said as agents secured his wrists with handcuffs. "There are more of us, more soldiers tired of being used and discarded. This is just the beginning." Sarah holstered her weapon and knelt beside Max, checking him for injuries. "No, Martinez, this is justice. For my father, for Ramon, and for every real soldier you dishonored with your crimes." As the FBI led Martinez and his team away, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Cooper. "All devices located and contained. Ceremony secured. Well done, Officer Collins." Max pressed against her leg, his earlier battle focus replaced by the gentle concern he always showed after a confrontation. Sarah scratched behind his ears, feeling the adrenaline slowly fade. "Come on, partner," she said softly. "Let's go finish what my father started." But as they made their way back through the tunnels toward daylight, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Martinez's words held a darker truth. This might be justice, but was it really the end? Max's steady presence at her side reminded her that whatever came next, they would face it together. After all, that's what partners do. The Atlanta Police Department's interrogation room felt too small for the weight of history it now contained. Sarah watched through the one-way glass as Martinez sat handcuffed to the table, his military bearing still evident despite his civilian clothes. Max lay at her feet, alert despite the exhaustion of the day's events. "We've confirmed 6 more identities he stole," Agent Cooper said, handing her a file. "All deceased soldiers, all with distinguished service records, and each identity was used to access different military installations across 3 states." Sarah flipped through the photos, faces of heroes whose memories had been tarnished by Martinez's scheme. What were they after? This goes beyond simple theft or infiltration. "Indeed, that's what worries us," Cooper replied, his voice grim. "The locations they targeted, weapons storage, communications centers, personnel records, it's like they were mapping out the military's vulnerabilities. But for whom?" Before Sarah could respond, Max suddenly stood, his attention fixed on Martinez through the glass. The former soldier had begun softly humming a tune that Sarah recognized, the Army Special Forces cadence. Her father used to sing it during his morning runs. "He's trying to get under my skin," she said, but Max's reaction suggested something else. The Belgian Malinois moved to the interrogation room door, his body language signaling urgency. "Wait!" Cooper grabbed her arm as she reached for the door handle. "Martinez specifically asked to speak with you. This could be a trap." Sarah looked down at Max, remembering every time his instincts had proven right. "Sometimes you have to trust your partner," she said, and opened the door. Martinez's eyes flickered between her and Max as they entered, a hint of respect showing through his hardened exterior. "The famous team that brought down the ghost soldier," he said, his voice carrying an edge of bitter amusement. "You know, your father had a dog too. Belgian Malinois, just like yours. They found him first, after the accident." Sarah kept her voice steady, professional. "We're not here to talk about my father. We want to know about your contacts. Who were you gathering intelligence for? You military brats are all the same." Martinez leaned forward, chains rattling. "So focused on the mission that you miss the bigger picture. Did you ever ask why your father was investigating those weapons thefts? Why a military police officer was looking into cases outside his jurisdiction?" Max's growl was so soft it was almost subliminal. But Sarah felt the shift in the room's atmosphere. Martinez wasn't just taunting them, he was leading them somewhere. "The wolf and lightning bolt," she said, watching his reaction. "That symbol was active 8 years ago, during my father's investigation. But it goes back further, doesn't it?" A cold smile spread across Martinez's face. "Now you're asking the right questions." Desert Storm, 1991. A special operations unit with a unique patch. A wolf's head with a lightning bolt. Officially, they never existed. Unofficially, they were the ones they sent when they needed something to disappear. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Ramon knew about this. That's why he was helping my father. "My brother was weak," Martinez spat. "He thought exposing the past would somehow make things right. But your father understood at the end. He saw how deep it went, how many careers were built on the bones of forgotten soldiers." Max suddenly tensed, his attention shifting to the interrogation room's air vent. Sarah had learned to trust these warnings. Something was wrong. "That's why you targeted the ceremonies," she said, backing toward the door while keeping her eyes on Martinez. "It was never about the bases or the intel. The ceremonies were where they would all be gathered. The generals, the politicians." Martinez's smile widened. "Now you understand, and you're about to learn what your father learned. Some secrets are meant to stay buried." A faint hissing sound came from the vent, and Max's warning bark echoed through the room. Sarah's training kicked in as she recognized the signs of chemical deployment. "Cooper!" she shouted, pulling her shirt over her nose. "Lock down the building, gas in the ventilation system." But Martinez wasn't trying to escape. Even as the gas began filling the room, he remained seated, that same cold smile on his face. "Did you really think I was working alone? The ghost soldiers are everywhere, Officer Collins. And now they know you're getting too close, just like your father did." Max was already at the door, pawing urgently at the handle. Sarah could hear alarms blaring in the hallway, the sound of running feet and shouted orders. But above it all, she heard Martinez's final words. The ceremony at Memorial Park was just a dress rehearsal. The real show? That's happening right now at Fort McPherson. Happy Veterans Day, Officer Collins. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized the truth. This entire operation, the ceremony, the tunnels, even Martinez's capture, had been an elaborate distraction. The real target was still out there, and they had less than an hour to stop it. As she and Max raced through the chaos of the evacuating police station, Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent alert from Cooper. "Multiple unauthorized access reports at Fort McPherson. Annual Veterans Day Memorial Service in progress. VIP attendance confirmed." Max's pace never faltered as they burst out of the building into the late afternoon sun. They had one chance to prevent a massacre and expose a conspiracy that had claimed too many lives already. The real battle was just beginning, and this time the ghosts of the past would not rest until justice was served. Sarah clicked her radio as they ran to her patrol car. "Dispatch, this is Officer Collins. I need immediate backup at Fort McPherson. Code 3, potential mass casualty threat, and get me everything we have on special operations units from Desert Storm, specifically any involving a wolf and lightning bolt insignia." Max leaped into the back seat, ready for action despite the exhaustion of the day. As Sarah hit the lights and siren, she glanced at her partner in the rearview mirror. "Time to finish this, boy," she said, and pointed the car toward Fort McPherson, where the shadows of war were gathering once again. The sun was setting over Fort McPherson as Sarah's patrol car screeched to a halt at the security checkpoint. Red and blue lights from multiple emergency vehicles painted the gathering dusk in alternating colors. Max was already alert in the back seat, picking up on the tension in the air. "They've locked down the memorial service," Cooper briefed her as she jumped out of the car. "But we've confirmed at least 3 infiltrators using stolen identities made it inside before we caught Martinez's warning. 2 senators and the Secretary of Defense are in attendance." Sarah checked her weapon, while Max underwent a quick tactical vest fitting. "Any contact with the infiltrators?" "Negative, but they've positioned themselves around the perimeter of the crowd. Our teams can't approach without risking panic." Cooper handed her an earpiece. "We've got snipers in position, but in this light, with that many civilians, they're waiting for something," Sarah said, studying the layout of the memorial grounds. The setup was eerily similar to the morning ceremony, but the stakes were infinitely higher. Martinez said this was the real target. Everything else was preparation. Max's ears suddenly perked forward, his nose working the air. Sarah had learned to read these subtle signals. He'd caught a familiar scent. "The ventilation system at the station," she said, the pieces clicking into place. "They used the gas to mask another scent, something Max would recognize from this morning." Cooper's eyes widened. "The explosives!" Sarah was already moving, Max taking point as they approached the memorial grounds. Through her earpiece, she could hear the ceremony continuing, a general speech about valor and sacrifice. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Max, find it," she commanded softly. The Belgian Malinois moved with purpose, weaving through the shadows of the memorial's columned structure. His training allowed him to search while remaining inconspicuous, just another K-9 unit on routine patrol. The first signal came near the east entrance. Max's subtle change in posture told Sarah all she needed to know. "Cooper, we've got a device at the east entrance. Same signature as this morning. Copy, bomb squad moving in. Keep searching." They found 2 more devices, each strategically placed to maximize casualties. But Max's behavior suggested there was something else, something bigger. He kept returning to the center of the memorial, near the eternal flame. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. The flame memorial. They're not just planning an explosion. They're going to use the gas line. "All units, move in now!" Cooper's voice cracked with urgency. "Clear the—" The first shot cut through the evening air like thunder. Chaos erupted as the crowd began to panic. Sarah caught a glimpse of black tactical gear moving through the confusion, the infiltrators making their move. "Max, protect!" The command was unnecessary. Her partner was already moving to intercept the nearest threat, his powerful frame cutting through the panicked crowd with precision. Sarah spotted one of the infiltrators near the eternal flame, tools in hand. Their eyes met across the distance, and she recognized him from Martinez's files. Another ghost soldier bent on revenge. "It's over!" she shouted, weapon raised. "Step away from the memorial!" His response was a burst of gunfire that sent civilians scrambling for cover. Sarah dove behind a marble column, hearing Cooper coordinate the response teams through her earpiece, but they wouldn't get there in time. Suddenly, Max's bark cut through the chaos, not from beside her, but from near the eternal flame. He'd circled around during the confusion, using the skills that had made him a legend in the K-9 unit. The infiltrator turned to face this new threat, giving Sarah the opening she needed. She broke from cover, closing the distance as Max kept the suspect's attention divided. "Sarah, the gas line!" Cooper's warning came just as she tackled the infiltrator. They went down hard on the memorial steps, his tools scattering, but she saw the timer on the device he'd attached to the gas main, 30 seconds. Max was already there, his training in explosive detection taking over. Sarah secured the suspect as her partner indicated exactly where the device was connected. 20 seconds. Her father's voice seemed to echo in her memory, from long-ago training sessions. Sometimes you've got one chance to make the right call. 10 seconds. Sarah's hands moved with surgical precision, remembering every detail of her bomb disposal training. The wrong wire would trigger an immediate detonation. The right one. 5 seconds. "Like your father," the infiltrator laughed through bloody teeth. So close to the truth, but not close enough. Max's low growl was the only other sound in Sarah's world as she made her choice. 1 second. The click of the disconnected wire seemed to echo across the memorial grounds. For a moment, absolute silence fell. Then reality rushed back in. The sound of helicopters, SWAT teams securing the perimeter, medical teams treating the injured. Cooper's voice reporting all suspects in custody. But Sarah's attention was on the documents that had fallen from the infiltrator's jacket. Files, stamped with the wolf and lightning bolt, dating back to Desert Storm. Evidence her father had died trying to find. Officer Collins, a voice broke through her focus. She looked up to see an elderly veteran standing nearby, his medals catching the last light of day. I served with your father in Desert Storm. He was investigating something back then, wasn't he? Something about our unit. Sarah stood, Max moving protectively to her side. He was trying to expose a truth that got buried in the sand. The old soldier nodded slowly. Maybe it's time that truth came to light. For Richard, for all of them. Hours later, as the last light faded from the sky, Sarah stood with Max at her father's grave in the military cemetery. The files they'd recovered would take months to process, but the truth was finally emerging. The Ghost Soldiers network was being dismantled. Their stolen identities returned to the heroes they'd belonged to. "We did it, Dad," she whispered, placing her hand on the cold stone. Max pressed against her leg, offering the same steady comfort he'd provided for 6 years of partnership. Her phone buzzed. Cooper, with news that Martinez had begun cooperating, naming names that went high up the chain of command. The conspiracy her father had died trying to expose was finally unraveling. Sarah looked down at Max, seeing the same dedication in his eyes that had first drawn her to him at the K-9 training center. "Ready to go home, partner." His tail wagged once, a gesture that meant more than words ever could. They walked together through the quiet cemetery, their shadows long in the evening light. The truth had cost lives and taken years to surface, but in the end, justice had prevailed. Not through vengeance or betrayal, but through loyalty, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a handler and her dog. As they reached their car, Sarah heard the distant sound of taps being played at the memorial, a soldier's final tribute. But for her and Max, it wasn't an ending. It was a reminder that some partnerships transcend duty, that some bonds are stronger than death itself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, but tonight they had honored her father's memory and protected the values he died defending, and they had done it together as partners should. The ghost soldiers were finally at rest, and the living could breathe easier knowing that somewhere in the night, a dedicated officer and her loyal K-9 partner were standing guard, ready to answer the next call to duty.